What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. Thursday, August 12th. Michael Beller, Jake Seeley, Brandon Funston here with you. Guys, we've got some football games today. Who's pumped? Who's betting on preseason football tonight? Which one of you guys?
I don't like the burn money.
Oh man, we got a handful of games tonight. That's gonna be something fun, something at least to have on in the background as we get closer and closer to the start of football season. Jake, is there anything you're looking for tonight out of any of these games?
Nah, I'll be watching in case something jumps out that was unexpected or something crazy. But watching for tonight's game, there's not really anything we can take too much from the first one. Although, if there's the Jaguars tonight, we have to watch that quarterback competition.
We got to
start for week one. Urban Meyer, can I curse on this? The biggest pile of shit we've ever seen in the preseason.
Exactly where I was going to go next, Brandon. We've got a burgeoning quarterback competition in Jacksonville, huh?
Do we? If he would have said the backfield, that would have made some sense. Or even in wide receiver, that would have made some sense. It makes no sense at quarterback. So, yeah, whatever, Urban Meyer.
Herb's going to herb. I don't think any of us buy the fact that we're going to see not Trevor Lawrence as the starter.
Gotta get that Gardner Minshew trade value up.
Yeah, right? Just boost that trade value. What's up, guys? Actually, we're going to talk about some of these quarterback situations across the league. We're going to get into some training camp news here today. We're going to have another ADP battle, this one between Brandon and Jake, and I'm just going to sit back and judge. We're going to talk some overvalued players as well. So we've got a jam-packed show. Let's jump right in, and let's bring back something that's been fun for us this summer. Let's get back into Guess That Player. We haven't done that for a few weeks here, so we're going to get back into it now. We're going to kick it off with here, clue number one. I was wide receiver 17 in points per game, half PPR, last year, ahead of Robert Woods, Terry McLaurin, and DJ Moore. So this guy, points per game, was looking pretty good. That's the floor that we're starting off with here, wide receiver 17.
This is how out of things I am. Like I told before the show, Beller, Funston, you missed it. I was like, I'm still trying to catch up on sleep. I forgot I was trying to join the Google Meets for this, and then I saw Method Man was trending, and I'm like, what is Beller talking about? It's like I'm all over the place. I need some ADHD medicine or something.
Did we figure out why Method Man is trending?
No, so I was trying to look at it. It was like all of a sudden Method Man is trending. Yeah, Method Man is a great guy, but wide receiver 17 in points per game. There we go.
Yeah, wide receiver 17 points per game ahead of Woods, McLaurin, and DJ Moore. This guy was doing pretty well for himself on a points per game basis, and he's someone who I think we're all interested in to some certain degree this year. So that's where we start. Let's move on to some training camp news. And the first thing that I think we should start with, guys, is what's up with Dak? What's up with Dak's shoulder? Going for an MRI, his second MRI here. The first time around, we said nothing to see here. It was a couple of weeks ago. No one's really going to be too concerned about any injuries that pop up in July, especially if they don't seem immediately serious. A second MRI, I don't care what anyone says. That can't possibly be a good thing. Jake, we'll start with you. Are you doing anything with the Cow? Like, let's say you're drafting this weekend. Are you feeling differently about any of these Cowboys right now?
No, I'm not, honestly, because even with arguably some of the worst quarterback play we've seen from most teams last year, it was still productive. It wasn't obviously what we want, but they still have a solid floor. It goes back to Ezekiel Elliott as well. Ezekiel Elliott had his 200-yard rushing games with terrible quarterback play at that point. So I understand the floor is significantly lower if there is no Dak, but I thought you were going to ask about Dak in his own right, and said that I wasn't moving Dak down because if anything's more replaceable, it's quarterback. So if I draft Dak and then I'm like, oh God, I have to go get Matthew Stafford instead, I'm okay with that. But overall, if we're talking about this at the same time next week, so next week we're approaching week 2 of the preseason, and there's still the concern out there. The positive thing that I hear is that it's a baseball type injury. It's more of that, and then it's underneath. So for anybody that doesn't know, if you've ever had a deep tissue massage or you've had something with your shoulder and they dig into under your armpit, which, by the way, you want to talk about gritting your teeth and the most painful thing you've probably felt from a massage. I've had that done. But it's kind of a minor thing. It's more just like it hurts while I sleep and stuff like that. It doesn't stop me from working out. It doesn't stop me from playing sports. It doesn't stop. So if that's what it is, and I'm not saying I know, I'm not the doctor for Dak. I'm just telling you from my own.
Dak Prescott Sealy here.
Just tell you well, I'm saying like it's my personal experience, and Dak Prescott is a professional athlete. So if I can go through it, I'm assuming Dak can. And that's what I'm saying. Like I'm assuming, and maybe it's the wrong assumption, but I'm assuming Dak is 10 times better at handling this than I am, and all it does is kind of bother me when I sleep.
Brandon, where are you on Dak right now? And are you moving? Are you, like, if you were drafting this weekend, are you drafting someone?
I get the board. I don't have a guess yet.
Well, look, I mean, I'm being honest. Like I had, if it came down to, I had Dak Prescott ahead of Russell Wilson, and kind of Russell Wilson kind of emptying out that top tier. I'd probably take Russell Wilson just for, you want to draft a guy that has a little less question marks. But I'm not too worried about this. I wish Hard Knocks would go every day now so we could really follow this. But, Jake, on the show,
it was the Cowboys.
Yeah, they brought up the fact that it's a baseball injury, and Virginia Zakis said the same thing in her column on the Athletic yesterday. Is that it's about 3-week timetable for him he should start to be appreciably better, but. If you watch Hard Knocks, I'm like, yeah, why are they still letting him on the field when he's talking about I need to take off because, my side is hurting. And they're like, no one was thinking about, well, we should get him into the trainers to actually diagnose this injury. Mike McCarthy finally had to go up to the doctor and say, don't you think instead of letting him just kind of run around here, we should actually go and see what's going on there? And the doc's like, yeah, if you want.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, yeah, if you want.
I'm a little bit concerned about the Cowboys in terms of their front office or their medical staff acumen.
If you want to check out the guy who literally determines if we are a good team or a bad team, we can do that. We can go ahead and check that out for sure. So we'll keep an eye on what's going on with Dak. It sounds like all three of us are still not quite hitting the alarm just yet. Our good buddy Rob Wasiak tuning in and joining the show, saying, "Good morning, gentlemen. What's up, Was? I'll be doing a couple of drafts with you later."
Yeah, he's just trying to get my good graces.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I owe him a drink because I bought him a drink at the Flex draft, but it ended up not going on my tab. I think it went on Elliot Chris' tab. So
sounds like you owe Elliot for drinks.
No, yeah, you actually did you miss that email? Elliot was trying to get everybody to pony up for their drinks that he paid for.
Right. Well, we're going to talk about this on air, but yeah, I did go out and check out and do my own tab on that night before I left, but I think I might have let a drink or two fall by the wayside. So
we were actually concerned about Funston. He had a couple of drinks and then he's like, I'm headed out, and then all of a sudden we're like, where did Funston go? Because you kind of said you were leaving and then just disappeared.
Yeah,
and then
that's a pretty typical MO for me after a day of drinking.
EY, Eric Young, and I were sitting there like, did Funston make it back to the hotel okay?
Hey, man. Old guys got to tap out a little bit.
Okay is a good way to describe making it back to the hotel.
All right, let's see if how we're feeling about Carson Wentz potentially being okay. We can get through this one relatively quickly. Better news on Wentz recently than what we were talking about last week. Sounding like the Colts are optimistic that he could be out there week 1, and even if he's not out there week 1, if they're this optimistic that it's possible, then maybe he's not going to miss as much of the season as we thought he could. So. Brandon, circling, Wentz, we know what Wentz is for the fantasy world, but getting back to Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, guys like that, are you back to where you were previously before the Wentz injury on these guys?
I'm close. I'm not quite all the way back with Taylor, who I think I had at RB7. I'm either at RB8 or RB9 right now. I got to double check, but it's good to see good news. I think if Carson Wentz is back by week 3, I think it's a win compared to where we thought this could go. And it sounds like Quentin Nelson also is trending as an early return. So, yeah, I mean, Jonathan Taylor's getting a lot of helium right before these injuries, and
yes.
It was easy when these injuries happened to knock him down. I think it's going to be a little bit harder for people to go all the way back to where they were until they actually 100% that it's stamped that they're back in week 1.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor was too high. Now Jonathan Taylor's too low. The happy medium was just kind of that 8-9 spot. Jonathan Taylor shouldn't have been in front of Zeke. You could argue, if you don't want to take the risk with Saquon Barkley, but I made that case a million times about Barkley that unlike Le'Veon Bell, you're getting an RB2 until he's quote unquote 100% in September, or October. But obviously the risk is maybe he's never 100%. But anyway, that being said, the Jonathan Taylor hate came in too strong after this, because even if it was Jacob Eason, or I actually think it would be Eason over Ellinger, but either way, when you go Ellinger's the safe one, Eason's the bigger arm, a little bit more aggressive, and you worry about that. But whichever way they went, Jonathan Taylor was still going to be fine. It's Jonathan Taylor. The same thing. Go back to Zeke. Go back to Zeke last year. Zeke, no, he wasn't top 5. He was still top 15 with terrible quarterback play. So I'm fine on Taylor. The Wentz thing, I will say, it actually concerns me more about the receivers if they're pushing the fact. Like if there's I know to say there's a case of week 1, but is it week 1? Like, I don't want to pull in the misery of the Mets and Jacob deGrom, but is it like that? Is it the Mets? That's my concern. And like for everybody out there that knows pays any attention to baseball, knows what I'm saying. The Mets are screwed up Jacob deGrom and their own playoff success potential because they're like, well, we can get him back missing 1 start. All right, well, we can get him back missing 2 starts and throw it on the side and get him ready for the next. Like, then they throw him out there for 7 innings. Like, and that's where for the comparison for people that don't know is they kind of like bring him back at 90% instead of waiting the extra 2 or 3 weeks to get him 100.
Yeah, and so hopefully that's not what is going to be the case with Carson Wentz, but certainly good news and feeling better about him and the Colts offense than we were a week ago at this time. Someone who we're not feeling better about is Darren Waller. Darren Waller keeps missing practice for the Raiders, and they're still haven't given us a reason as to why he is not out there. Jake, when do you get worried about Waller in relation to his ADP, in relation to his draft stock? And I know you're not a tight end guy early. I know that you're probably off Waller in general, but just take that part out of it. At what point would you advise someone who is in on Waller, no matter what you say, to be out on him at his cost?
Yeah, I was glad, because I was going to say I was taking Kittle in front of him anyway, barely. So I felt like I was on an island with that one. But I think for now, it's still okay. We say this every single year. If somebody that's experienced, especially running backs, and I know he's not a running back, but I'm just bringing this into it, is somebody that's experienced, I'd rather just tell me week 1 you're healthy than playing preseason games. I don't need to see you play preseason games. I know who you are. And you have the same quarterback you've had. It's not like it's a new situation with, Shark and Trevor Lawrence or Curtis Samuel and Ryan Fitzpatrick and stuff like that. So I'm okay with it unless we get to like week 3 of the preseason and it's not, we're holding him out for week 3 because there's no point. It's he's still not ready. We don't know what's going like that. When we still don't have clarity before week 3 of the preseason, then I start to get concerned. So about a week and a half from now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think, he's still just rock solid top 3, but I was a Waller number 2 guy and Kittle number 3. And I think this is at least enough since they're close enough. It's going to be apparently it's going to be a bomb of a comment here, but yeah, what is going on? Yeah, I would take Kittle number 2 now and Waller 3.
Yeah, I think that's a fair enough tiebreaker for sure. And I just wonder if this drags, does he end up sliding down in comparison with the rest of the group of players, not just tight ends, but do we start taking him behind or start taking some of these receivers who are going in that same range over him? Would be great to see him back. Agree with you, Jake. We don't need to really see too much from Darren Waller, but we would like to see him at least getting on the practice field at some point. Someone who else we'd love to see that from, who we're probably not going to at this point, is Curtis Samuel. On the PUP list because of a groin injury, and Ron Rivera can hand wave this as much as he wants, but groin, not good. A player like Samuel's, with Samuel's skill set and what we expect his role to be, especially not good to be dealing with a groin injury. He is on a new team. I know it's an offense that he knows from his time in Carolina, but still, it's a new team. It's a new quarterback. It's an offense that he at least hasn't played in for a year here. Brandon, are you moving Curtis? I mean, I guess you definitely are moving Curtis Samuel down. How far down do you move him before you get back in on it?
Probably a good 5 or 6 receivers. There's a decent that clump of receivers. You get in that late 30s to 40s range of receivers. They're all pretty tightly knit there, and so something like this, where a guy could miss a decent amount of time in the preseason, it's worth moving him down that far. It's nice that he knows the offense, but it's the offense that didn't unlock him like the Joe Brady offense did, right? So there's that as well. So yeah, I think it's worth knocking him down. A good handful of wide receivers in that range.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that point, because I was talking to Jeff Ratcliffe yesterday. He said the same thing. It's like people are kind of, even if healthy, people are kind of overlooking what if he goes back to being used like he was with this coaching staff. So that's a downgrade. That's the problem, is that they saw his downfield ability, that being Joe Brady, as you just mentioned, Funston, and opened him up downfield. And it was the whole appeal of that. It was like, okay, he's also getting to a downfield passer in Fitzpatrick. Well, it was already, maybe we should be a little bit concerned that it's not how they use him. And maybe this opens up Terry McLaurin more downfield. But now I actually did this with Meany on Monday on the All in Football show. I said the three people, and I'm glad you said Samuel, is the three people I brought up was DJ Shark, Curtis Samuel, and Kenny Galladay. All similar situations, missing time with new quarterbacks, two of them on new teams, but all three of them having new quarterbacks and all three of them not having the time to build that rapport, and all three of them having other talent on their team who could contend for targets. So I am concerned about Samuel. I think that's a fair drop. Brandon, I don't know the exact number. I'm looking at my own ranks, but I think that's a fair drop. That's a similar drop to I gave Galladay. You knock him outside of the top 25 into that high end 30. Same situation with DJ Shark. I think he's one of the best bounce back candidates, but at the same time, they bring in Marvin Jones. All three of these guys should be on your concern radar.
Yeah, definitely. And just to give you an idea of where Curtis Samuel is going by the Joe Public ADP, he's rubbing draft day elbows with Jarvis Landry, Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller. So you can think about how you would maybe position him now with guys like that. One more piece of news I want to get to, and it's another guy who's missing a really important time for him. It's Rashod Bateman. He's going to be out multiple weeks with a soft tissue leg injury. I mean, Jake, I feel like, he was already so far down our draft list, and understandably so, rookie team that's not going to throw the ball a ton in Baltimore, but he was maybe a late round dart. Is he off of even that late round dart consideration for you with the time he's going to be missing the rest of the summer?
No, see, that's where I think he should have been. And that's, I know there was a lot of people that were taking him there, but there was also some industry-wise, especially the people that love the draft early. They were like, oh, Bateman can be the number one. Bateman brings more than Marquise Brown brings to this team and all that type of stuff. And you know me, I was the one that keeps bringing up the number that said 20% passing boost for Lamar Jackson, which is an insane number. No quarterback's ever going to do that. Would still only get him to 500 targets. And that's why I wasn't interested in Bateman or Marquise Brown. And I had concerns about Mark Andrews taking a little bit of a step back. The only thing this really does for me is kind of gets me a little bit back into Mark Andrews as pushing him closer on the heels of TJ Hawkinson as the fifth tight end. Is like they're kind of more neck and neck than they were for me before. But also Bateman now becomes a decent flyer in my opinion, because yes, the 13th, 14th round, I could just throw him on my bench. I don't have to start him for a couple weeks. Whereas if I take him in the 10th round, it's still not a huge investment, but what's comparative to what's on the board in the 10th round, I'd rather have been taking those names. I will say this, deeper leagues too. Speaking of injuries, Tylan Wallace, who fell down NFL draft board because of an injury. I wouldn't be surprised if we're starting to all of a sudden hear Tylan Wallace's name in about 2 weeks of like, hey, he's been the one stepping up, because we know what Marquise Brown is. He's the new Deshaun Jackson, Santana Moss.
Yeah, I'm just out on Baltimore receivers. I mean, we're talking,
which is the right answer.
I'm with you.
Look,
I'm with you.
Marquise Brown's been their number one, and he hasn't been that great. And now we're talking about above and beyond Marquise Brown, Rashod Bateman and Tylan Wallace and Sammy Watkins is there. Is like this offense couldn't even feed one receiver, let alone 3 or 4. So I'll believe it when I see it, and that's kind of where I'm at. I love Rashod Bateman's talent. I wish he would have landed somewhere else.
You can't even get it on Watkins with no.
Week one. I mean,
week one, Sammy. We all know that.
If you are not building a DFS lineup with Sammy Watkins and Lamar Jackson in week 1, you're stupid.
Get those lineups built now. You can prepare for them for the next month or so, and we know those week 1 Sammy heroics are coming our way. Something else coming our way. We're going to be talking about a little bit of ADP battle in just a second here. First, though, I want to talk to you about sheets and about bathrobes and about towels and all the great things you can get at Brooklyn. And summer comfort, it goes beyond t-shirts and shorts when you're outside. You want to be comfortable and cool when you're sleeping too, don't you? I know I do. Brooklyn and their award-winning sheets are here for your cool, comfortable nights. They got tons of options from prints and all that to the material that these sheets are made out of. Just a ton of things that you can shop around for and find exactly what you're looking for to keep yourself cool and comfortable all summer long. Right now, you can go to brooklinen.com, use the promo code ATHLETIC to get $20 off with a minimum purchase of $100. That's BROOKLINEN.com with the promo code ATHLETIC for $20 off a minimum purchase of $100. Also want to talk to you guys about teeth. because who doesn't love talking about teeth? There's a specialist for just about everything. You got mechanic for your car, a plumber for your shower, and an orthodontist for your crooked, uneven teeth. And that's what sets Candid apart. They're invisible, comfortable, removable aligners, and most importantly, they use orthodontists all the way through the process. The same orthodontist who created your plan is with you from start to finish, so you never have to wonder how you're doing. Your treatment is prescribed and closely monitored remotely by the licensed orthodontist who's an expert in tooth movement. You can book an appointment at a Candid studio near you or do everything from the comfort and convenience of your own home. Right now, go to candidco.com/fantasy. Use the code fantasy. That's candidco.com/fantasy with the code fantasy. We'll get you $75 off your starter kit. All right, guys, let's get back into the show here first before we get on to our ADP battle. Nope, you're in. I already see you. Before we get to our ADP battle, we're going to get our second Guess That Player clue. Here it is, clue number 2. I had 3 games in 2020 with 3 or fewer targets. This is a guy who dealt with some uneven usage, and that could be the case for him again this season. So 3 or fewer targets in 3 games last year. To give you a jog your memory on clue number 1, wide receiver 17 in points per game. So that's what we're looking at here.
Those are too vague.
Keep those brains
Brandon,
rolling.
Do you have a guess yet?
No, I don't.
Yeah, it's like, they're too vague so far. No, what I was going to say, Beller, for real quick, I don't know if you want to circle back, but Brian Mitchell was just saying that he heard through the grapevine if week 1 was today that Curtis Samuel will be ready to play.
Ooh, okay. Well, that's good to know.
So
that's very good to know. Yeah. All right. Well, Brian Mitchell, always a good source on Washington football team news. And hey, the Washington football team is going to be involved in this ADP battle that we have staged for today. One of you guys likes one guy better. One of you guys likes the other guy better. You both like both of them. You both have them both ranked pretty highly. Both have them both right around where their ADP is. But that's not fun if we just say, I like both, whatever. We have an ADP battle here. Antonio Gibson versus Najee Harris. Antonio Gibson, you see it down there. He is the RB11 with a 15.46 ADP. Najee Harris is the RB12, a 15.64 ADP. Could you get both of them at the turn? Sure, I suppose you could. But we're living in a world where you can only have one. Brandon, you are higher on Antonio Gibson. Jake, you are 1 spot higher on Najee Harris. Going to give the floor to Brandon here. Make the Gibson over Harris case.
Yeah, I don't have a laundry list of stuff here because I have these guys ranked really closely together and like you said, at ADP. But this comes down to environment for me because you're talking about 2 guys that are versatile, that are almost the same size. There's like 6'2" in the 220 range for both of them. So it comes down to the fact that if you look at Pittsburgh, one of the worst offensive lines in the league, Pro Football Focus ranked it 31st coming into the season in terms of talent and expectations. And the production in the backfield was the worst in fantasy last year in Pittsburgh. And Washington was well above average. And, you know, Antonio Gibson, with all expectations, going to have an increased role in the passing game. Peyton Barber stole 4 rushing touchdowns from him, 2 in week 1 because Antonio Gibson wasn't ready to be turned loose, and 2 at the end of the year because he had a turf toe. So that could have went from 11 to 15 touchdowns pretty easy for Antonio Gibson. So for that reason, it's really environment mostly. I just like the environment of Washington. I like the bird in hand of Antonio Gibson actually having 1 year of NFL production put in the books, and Najee Harris is still, as much as we loved him at Alabama, it's been a checkered history of sure thing Alabama backfield products coming in and being slammed. I think Najee Harris will be that guy, but he has to do it still.
Yeah, it's always the argument. Brandon's not saying this, I know, but it's always the argument. Oh, he has to do it in the NFL. We haven't seen him. Every rookie in the history of the NFL has never played a snap in the NFL. Yeah. For everything you just said about the rushing touchdowns, I don't think that's a guarantee. I actually think Gibson, and I did this stat earlier, way early in the offseason, he was top 5 in touchdowns per percentage and touchdown percentage, and the fact of how many per touches and getting in the end zone. And that's a high number. He in himself, if I could go pull it up, hey, go to The Athletic, go check it out. By the way, you can go find it. No, but the number he was up there with was an absurd number for running backs in general, let alone somebody like Antonio Gibson, where do they use him that way again? Because the big thing coming out of college was, can Antonio Gibson run the ball? He's more of a pass catcher. And everybody's always saying, well, he'll be involved more in the passing game. So you realize that Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't throw to his running backs that much. I mentioned the stat that over the past 5 years, he has 3 passing touchdowns to running backs, one of them to Matt Forte. Like, he just doesn't throw to the running back. So I go to Najee Harris, and you're telling me he's coming into the Steelers offense and people will push back on the offensive line, which is fine. And we keep coming up with this conversation every single time. And the fact that we have top 10 running backs finishing on bottom offensive lines. We have running backs on top 5 offensive lines that don't even crack the top 15. So I'll go back to this. 10 rushing touchdowns between Benny Snell and James Conner last year, and 300 touches for Najee Harris, who is an elite talent. Yes, he's already elite. And you give this on a team where he wants a bell cow, that being Mike Tomlin. We know that. He is going to give him 300 touches. I want volume. I know Najee Harris is getting 300-plus touches. I don't know that Antonio Gibson gets 270, because you just mentioned it, Brandon. Part of it is the Peyton Barber, the other people involved, is they don't want him to be out there 20 touches per game. I know Najee Harris will get the 20 touches per game, so I have no problem with Antonio Gibson, but I'm going with the guaranteed volume, and I'm taking the 300-plus touches.
Okay, are we rebutting, or are we just
Yeah, no, definitely go for a rebuttal here.
Well, so Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't throw to running backs, but Ron Rivera does. You know, it's kind of the same deal with Jameis Winston doesn't throw to running backs, but Sean Payton does. And, you know, if Jameis Winston doesn't throw to running backs now, if he's a New Orleans quarterback, that's a huge problem. And I think, you know, that's the same deal with Ron Rivera. That's part of the offense. I'm sure there's going to be some kind of a mandate with Ryan Fitzpatrick that you're in a place now where we throw to the running backs. And we got this guy who runs a 4.38 40 and who played wide receiver in college, who we need to get the football to. So I think that's going to happen. I don't think he's going to regress in catches. I think he's only going to go up. Maybe it's not going to be a massive, you know, jump up, but I do feel good about the overall volume. You know, I think everything that we've heard in terms of just the camp reports and just the, you know, the hyperbole you get about guys, it's been all good on Antonio Gibson. We're seeing that he's in the turbo quick offense. That's, I think we're just seeing an evolution of his experience, you know, going to be turning into more touches. So I think we were all surprised he got as many touches as he did, and I think that kind of speaks to the, you know, what they think of him there. So, so yeah, that would be my rebuttal on that.
206 touches in 14 games for Antonio Gibson, with 36 of those coming through the air. Of course, we know J.D. McKissic has a role to play in the passing game for this team as well. Jake, you want to take us home on this battle?
Yeah, it just comes down to, I don't even think that the passing game involvement is going to be all too dissimilar. You had over 60 backfield, about 70 targets going to the backfield of the Steelers last year. And again, that was James Conner, Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, and Jalen Samuels. So you're telling me that crew, again, let's look at the landscape of the NFL, and we always talk about how many backfields do we get somebody that gets 70% plus of the backfield to themselves. You know, Christian McCaffrey was one of the few that gets 90. That just doesn't happen. So let's throw out the 90s. The 80 plus, this number from last year too, 80 plus is like 3, maybe 4 running backs. The Steelers in past years have been one of those teams. So let's even knock it down to 70, 75%. It really comes down to, again, that if J.D. McKissic isn't a factor this year, sure, I'll buy in a little bit more. Mostly because I don't know that J.D. McKissic can repeat what he just did last year. This might be a one-off, similar to like a Theo Riddick towards the end of his career type of thing. But the fact that McKissic's still involved in the passing game and is a great pass catcher in his own right, that's what it comes down to. It comes down to talent disparity. And I love Gibson, but McKissic is 10 times better, if anything, of a threat to Najee Harris. And again, Najee Harris over Antonio Gibson on a Steelers offense, who the Steelers will 100% use as a quote-unquote bell cow. That's really what it comes down to. 75. Put it this way, even if it wasn't Najee Harris, let's say James Conner. Let's go back to last year. And you told me James Conner is getting 75% of the touches for the Steelers this year. And, of course, health I'm throwing out the window. But I want somebody getting 75% of the touches. That's it. That's really what it comes down to.
Let me ask you guys this before we leave this one behind. It's obviously very close between these two guys, and I think you presented the cases for both of them well. Let's say you are in the stage of the draft, just where their ADP is. So right around 15.5. So what if you have the 15th pick in the overall? That means you have the 8th pick. Yeah, the 8th pick. No. The 10th pick. Yeah, the 10th pick. If you have the 15th pick, you have the 10th pick also in the first round. So if you're in that range, do you find yourself taking one of these guys, Brandon?
Yeah, I do. And right now it's Antonio Gibson. You know, not too long ago, I had Najee Harris in front of him, and I've kind of just been, you know, stewing on that a little bit, and I've decided I'd rather have Antonio Gibson at this point. But really, 6 and 1, half a dozen the other. If no one's going to make the decision for me, I'll go Gibson. But if Gibson's gone, I'll take Harris. I'm fine with that.
You know what they say, Brandon? Often 9 out of 10 times your gut was right. Trust your gut. You were right the first time. You should have never switched. Trust yourself. Trust your gut. Yeah, actually, I would take Najee Harris. I would take him around the turn. Obviously, being the 12th running back, there's, you sprinkle in Adams, Hill, Kelsey probably goes. So he's going around that spot, as you mentioned. Right. So if I was a few picks or two ahead of that, I have no problem taking Harris right in that early second round range. So I will. Because often, I often go running back to start in this year's drafts in general.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can definitely revisit this one as we get a little bit closer to draft season. But a nice job, guys. Antonio Gibson and Najee Harris, and two guys who we know, no matter what, are going to be rubbing draft day elbows with one another. Let's get on to Manscaped here. Fantasy football season is back. And while we're all focused on building the strongest possible fantasy roster, we also don't want to forget about our full roster of body parts now, do we? Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for kickoff by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the code AthleticFF. Check out the Performance Package 4.0, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0. This 4th-generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents, and that happens thanks to Manscaped's advanced skin-safe TM technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 has a 7,000 RPM motor, a new multifunction on-off switch, and an LED spotlight when needed for a more precise shave. It's also waterproof, so that's great. The package as a whole comes with the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, trademark Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver, and 2 free gifts: Performance Boxer Briefs and the Shed Travel Bag. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code TheAthletic at manscaped.com. Again, that's 20% off and free shipping with the code TheAthletic at manscaped.com. Also, it's betting season, you guys. Football is back. We know that we are going to be doing quite a bit of that. You can follow along with us all season here at The Athletic and with our partners over at BetMGM. Sign up with them. They're our exclusive betting partner. You can get a $1,000 risk-free first bet plus a free 3-month subscription to The Athletic. Just sign up at betmgm.com/TA-fantasy to take advantage of this offer from the king of sportsbooks. That's betmgm.com/TA-fantasy. This is a new customer offer. It's paid out in bonus dollars. Visit betmgm.com for terms and conditions. All right, guys, one more thing to get to. Well, it's a lot of things, but it is brought together in one big package of overvalued players. Want to talk about these guys here. Jake's got a great column up on the site right now that you can check out that runs through all of his overvalued players. We're all going to give a couple. We'll see how many we can get through here. Time permitting, we'll get through as many as we can. I'm going to start at the quarterback position where we are in agreement on the overvalued quarterbacks. So we can really just talk about this guy. All of us are fading Justin Herbert. All three of us thinking this is a little bit overvalued of a situation. We've talked about it a bit, but Jake, I think I'm going to let you take the floor here and make the case for Justin Herbert being overvalued at ADP, typically seeing him as the number 7 quarterback off the board.
Yeah, it's not just number 7 either. If you really wanted to nitpick and got in a huge argument about 7 versus 10 or anything like that, it's, the quarterback, it's more of where he's going overall is the biggest factor too. And that's my issue is Justin Herbert. Is I don't dislike Justin Herbert. He shocked a lot of people, including myself, at how well he played last year. But it really comes down to just Justin Herbert and what we've seen from the NFL adjusting to a lot of players in general. And now it's on him to readjust back. And granted, some of the defenses he faced towards the end where he did struggle a little bit, Miami at times in that game, Buffalo, obviously New England, and everybody's like, oh, Kelly Belichick and rookie quarterbacks in general, which is a little bit of a narrative, but it's more often true than not. But still, if you want to say, okay, those really tough defenses, yes, but at the same time, it's the NFL. You have to face tough defenses, and he's got some tough defenses within his division and on the schedule this year. So the problem is they started baiting him into some throws that he was making in college and getting some of the pressure on him, which he showed in college that when pressure is in his face, he struggles at time. And you can say any quarterback who has time in the pocket should make throws. Yeah, because they're an NFL level quarterback. So it's on Herbert now to readjust. And again, it's not that I don't think he can, and I hope he does. I hope he's successful, especially because I love Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and I have a ton of Austin Eckler. So please adjust. But at the same time, where he's being drafted is my biggest issue, and the fact of what you can just wait on at quarterback. And the biggest egregious part about this is for a while there, he was going in front of Aaron Rodgers, which is the most criminal thing in history.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Going ahead of Aaron Rodgers, going ahead of Russell Wilson often, that was my biggest issue. I think he's absolutely a top 10 quarterback, there's enough question marks there still that you can't put him ahead of guys that have just been proving it year in and year out.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the point here with Justin Herbert, and there could easily be a scenario where he takes a minor step back, is still very good, but is overvalued at the cost that we're seeing him go at here. So Justin Herbert, someone who we're all fading at cost. Would love to get him a little bit less, but seems like in every draft I've been in, there's always someone who is willing to buy in that he is at least what he was last season and maybe taking a step forward this year. And there's an argument for that too, right? I mean, a great rookie season, a guy who was a highly drafted out of Oregon, you don't just do that by accident. So there is an argument to be made on the other side of this, but all three of us staying away from Justin Herbert. Brandon, actually, let's talk about your undervalued quarterback that you had in addition to Herbert. Just make a quick case here for Baker Mayfield, if only because it's not like he's valued that highly. So why do you think even at that stage he's a little bit over?
Well, because, he's going in the mid, somewhere between 15 and 20 at quarterback. I think he's just the name brand appeal gets people excited, but he's on one of the most he's directing one of the most run-heavy offenses in the league. You'll have a bunch of games where you're under 200 yards. I think I counted 7 games where he had 1 or less touchdown pass. He had a couple explosions that helped his overall numbers. But if you look at his points per game, I mean, he was a couple points shy of Derek Carr, and I just don't know how much more upside there is. They're going to continue to be who they are going to be. He doesn't run a whole lot. So it kind of dependent on him having these big passing games, and that's just not the nature of the Cleveland Browns offense. So I think he was quarterback 25 in points per game last year among quarterbacks that played at least half the season. So I mean, it's just what are we expecting him to, what's the next step for him? I don't know if it's a giant step. I think he's kind of settled into a pretty solid game manager here, and 26 touchdown passes for as many times as he threw. That might have been a little high.
Yeah. I think that's a succinct argument for sure with what we know we're going to see from the Cleveland offense. Let's move on to the running back position. You guys both have some spicy options here. My first one is Najee Harris. We already talked a bit about him. My other one is Chase Edmonds. We've made that case a bit. So I'm going to skip that. I've got some better options at the wide receiver and tight end position, but I like where you guys are going at the running back position. We're going to start with you, Jake. Josh Jacobs. And this is another little Jake and Funston battle here, because Funston is, basically part of the Jacobs family here. So, Jake, make the case that Josh Jacobs is overvalued.
Well, so a preview to our RB roundtable is the fact that I also think the hate is going too far in some points on Josh Jacobs. I brought him up. There's a happy medium. Josh Jacobs shouldn't be near the RB1 tier, but he also shouldn't be outside the top 20 running backs. So you got to find this happy medium is bottom teens. And really what it comes down to is bottom teens is what's the big disparity between Josh Jacobs and Nick Chubb? They're very similar in the fact that, but I trust one offense a hell of a lot more. I trust the other's touches and Nick Chubb a little bit more than I trust Josh Jacobs, but similar situations. And it really comes down to teams and consistency. And what the final factor is, it's the touchdowns. Now, of course, we can see this with running backs skew any direction any given year, and touchdowns can be extremely volatile in their own right. Hell, we were just talking about Nick Chubb 2 years ago and the fact that he was third at 3 and out at the goal line. But if you told me team versus team, that's where we're going to take it. There's a lot of questions about the Raiders' offensive line. There's a lot of talk about, well, the guys they got rid of were guys that they wanted to, bring in the younger options. But I still trust the Browns and the Browns offense and their scheming a lot more. And I do think that Kenyon Drake can be a bigger thorn in Jacobs' side than anybody was last year. And we already had the frustration from Jacobs last year. They just don't want to use him in the passing game. We thought everything was gravy after week 1. We're like, finally, Josh Jacobs in the passing game. And they're like, well, good luck with that because that's it for the rest of the year.
Brandon, you want to rebut this one?
No, I don't think we're far off. Like I have Josh Jacobs at like 16 and
you're like 2 spots off.
Yeah. I mean, but I think I've been bringing up the Nick Chubb thing. It's like, the Raiders are sort of a lesser version of the Browns. You look at it, I think they had similar touches in the backfield last year, a little bit more passing in the Raiders side, but yeah, and that's why I was saying we shouldn't just, crush Josh Jacobs' value because Kenyon Drake's there, because Kenyon Drake can be Kareem Hunt and Josh Jacobs can be
not to interject, Brandon, but I'm one of the lowest people on Nick Chubb.
Where do you have him that you're one of the lowest?
Because of the touchdown variance. Like, I just think, guaranteeing that's going to happen again. If he just drops 20% in touchdown rate, now he's fringe running back 1.
Yep.
I know we're not really talking about Nick Chubb, but now we are kind of talking about Nick Chubb. So let me just bring up that he has 28 rushing TDs in 44 games, 37 started games. And so, Brandon, this is one of your go-to lines, right? That once a guy like establishes he has a thing, he sort of owns that thing. Has Nick Chubb established that maybe he's not as touchdown variant as the average running back?
Well, I think that's fair in a situation, and he's one of the better power running backs in the league, good size. I don't think Cleveland, the way they're set up for this year, is going to stop getting touches, inside the 5-yard line. So I'm not really worried that Nick Chubb isn't going to get a fair share of touchdowns.
All right, I know someone who you are worried about at this position. It's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I don't know to what degree you are worried about him. You do say he's an overvalued running back. I think Jake and I disagree. I know I disagree with you on him being overvalued.
I disagree.
I know you guys love him, and it's not like I hate him. I think his
just be wrong here, and then one of us will jump in and be right.
Well, I think his Joe Public ADP is 15. I have him at 18. So. Or 17. I'm not sure, but I have him down a couple spots on ADP. I just, I look at the Chiefs, and I think they were 26th in running back carries last year. They were 19th in running back receptions. I don't think that they feel like Clyde Edwards-Helaire can be a guy that is, taking that 75% backfield share like Jake was talking about. I think Darrell Williams is attached at the hip there, and I think they've kind of settled into that being a nice little duo. But if they're not super high volume because they love Pat Mahomes being able to hit Travis Kelce at will, and then Tyreek Hill as well, I mean, we know that that's the way they're going. So I just don't love the volume enough, especially when Darrell Williams take it away. And most likely at the goal line, because Clyde Edwards-Helaire proved pretty quickly he was not going to be a great goal line back there. So I touchdown upside stunted a little bit. There's some touch, overall volume that I'm a little bit concerned about. So that's cut me down a little bit. I'm not completely dumping on him, but I do have him down below ADP.
Jake, let me take this one first for a second here. 1,100 yards from scrimmage, 5 touchdowns in 13 games. That's what he did last year. Feels like a floor. And so I feel like you're already like, if he was being drafted the way he was last year, I was out on him. I didn't have Clyde Edwards-Helaire on one team last year. If he was still being treated as a RB1, I would be out on him. But if we're talking about anywhere between RB14 and RB19, which is where you are seeing him go with settling right into that range, in the middle of that range as his ADP, I mean, I think what he showed us last year is the floor, and that's basically what you get if he as an RB17. So I feel totally good about him where he is, and I think that there is an obvious ceiling for him to push beyond that this season. That's my case on behalf of CEH. What do you got, Jake?
I got go. Hey, check the link. There's your hashtag. Check the link. I got one in on the show. Yeah, I'll give you the title of the article that came out this week: Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Tua Tagovailoa, and Jake Seeley's top bounce back candidates for 2021. So there you go. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, fringe RB1 for me. So you can go dive into it over there. Brandon knows that's why he's smiling, because he edited it. We're gonna have to find. This is obviously a side bet waiting to happen, but I'm not gonna go. You know what? We'll talk about some wide receivers, and I'll find a good side bet that we can plug in on CEH. And just so you guys know, I'm putting in all these ADP battles as side bets also. So we've got a really good list that we'll go over before the start of the season. Let's move on to Josh Jacobs versus Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Is that one that would you rather have Jacobs than CEH, Brandon?
Yep, I have him ranked back to back. So
yeah, I know his ranks.
I mean,
there you go.
This is like a Najee Antonio Gibson bet, though.
But you have to make decisions. That's what makes the fantasy game hard, right? I would love to have all 4 of those guys on my team, but we have to make decisions. So here's a decision that you're making: Josh Jacobs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's a side bet. I'm marking it down. Let's get to our overvalued wide receivers. Jake, take this one away first. Wait. There it is. Julio Jones, overvalued. Why?
Mostly because he's going top 15 wide receiver, and that's just really what it comes down to. I love Julio Jones, and I've been a proponent of arguing against the people that he never scores touchdowns and blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, 1 season of 3 touchdowns, and that's all anybody can remember. Let's even say he never scores touchdowns. Okay, he goes out there and just averages 90 to 100 receiving yards per game. Please give me that consistency. I'll take Julio Jones. He doesn't play every single game. Well, last year was actually the first time in how long that he hasn't played 15 games. So all these narratives, it's just the perception, because a lot of times this is where the dumpster diving for Clyde Edwards-Helaire comes from, is people get burned one time and then it's like they get these blinders and only see what happened to them. So I love Julio Jones, and something I pulled as a number that I was tweeting about. I was just looking up play action percentages and numbers and stuff like that, just for the fun of it. Because it's you should never base everything on a play action number, just like you shouldn't base anything off just broken tackles. But I was just pulling some interesting ones because I was curious. And not surprisingly, the Titans were at the top of the league when you have Derrick Henry pulling in defenses the way he does. But the interesting thing was that of all receivers in yards per route run and play action percentage, it wasn't A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown was still top 15. It was Corey Davis. He was the biggest. So Julio Jones was already 8th. And I just bring that in to say he can easily replace Corey Davis, but Corey Davis is also in the 30s. He's better than Corey Davis, but A.J. Brown's still there. Derrick Henry is still there. Julio Jones as the 18th, 19th, 20th wide receiver, sure, sign me up all day long. But you're taking them, I see a lot of people still taking them 13, 14, 15. It's just more about the wide receivers immediately behind them that I'm taking.
That's the case for a lot of these wide receivers too. And you're going to see, I think, a big variance in how drafts shake out, because there are plenty of arguments you can make for every, like you could take those like that 13 to 20 group and shake them up in a bag and pull them out in any order. And that's how a lot of different drafts are going to go here. Brandon, I jumped in on you. Do you want to say something about Julio? And then you can also take that right into your guy too.
Yeah, I guess it maybe does lend itself to my guy because, Jake presented the stats side of things for Julio Jones. I just can't shake an anecdote that a local sports guy here, Brock Heward, remember him? He was the backup to Peyton
How
Manning
could we
for
forget
years.
Brock Heward?
So he's kind of like, he does a show, they talk Seahawks, and around when Julio Jones was available for trade, they were asking him if he wanted, the Seahawks to go out and get Julio Jones. And he covered a bunch of NFL games last year and saw some Atlanta games. And he said the amount of maintenance and just what it took to get Julio Jones ready to play every week because of those hamstrings. He's like, after seeing that, I don't want the Seahawks to make that investment. And I just, it sticks in the back of my head that we're at a point where I think this is going to be something that continues to pop up, whether it's 2 games or whether it's he can gut through it. But I think those soft tissue issues are something that maybe aren't going to go away with him. So
tissues.
And speaking of soft tissue, let's go with Will Fuller as a guy. And I'm not sure. I didn't check his ADP, but Will Fuller is kind of like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, where his ADP may be one thing, but there's always one guy in the room that wants him at a ridiculously high spot. They're like, I need to be the one that gets Will Fuller. So I see Will Fuller in, sometimes going ridiculously high. And this is a guy that, 14 games is his career high, and that was his rookie season. Since then, he hasn't been higher than 11. We're already going to miss one game because of suspension.
He would have done it last year.
He would have done it last year? He didn't do it last year.
I know, but that was the suspension. The injury didn't keep him from doing it last year.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, okay, so now we can wave that away. He's not injury prone anymore.
I'm just saying he would have done it last year.
Sure,
but yes,
yeah,
yes,
the PED has healed his legs.
But he's also switching from Deshaun Watson, a very proven downhill thrower or a deep ball thrower, to Tua, who we have to see if he can do that. But and he's also part of a much bigger crowd than he was in Houston. If you look at the guys that are there that are options to be thrown to. So
I don't know. I think that whole trio of wide receivers, Devontae Parker's not healthy right now, had hamstring at the beginning of last year and the end of last year. They're talking about Jalen Waddle being brought along slowly because he's still not 100% from college. I have a feeling like Tua's downfall might not even be Tua's fault. I mean, he just might not have any consistent wide receivers this year.
Well, you can start, championing Preston Williams again.
Yeah, you were all over Preston.
No, for clarity's sake, I was.
Do Brandon and I not have memories?
Yeah, no, you don't, because you're misremembering the second part of it, where I was one of the first people to say as soon as they change the offense, he doesn't fit. He doesn't fit the West Coast-y style offense that they're trying to run. He's not that guy. He needs a new team.
I feel like
I am a Preston Williams fan.
30 on him at the start of last season.
Yeah, and then they switched the offense. That was with Fitzpatrick. That was with a different offense.
All right. We could talk about this for a long time, but we're already 50 minutes deep on this show. So I'm going to get in my overvalued wide receiver. It's Adam Thielen. I'm surprised that he's still going as like a back-end wide receiver too. I would be all over Adam Thielen as, or like what you said, Jake, just as like a tier down, right? You say Julio Jones, wide receiver 13, no thanks. Wide receiver 18, sure. For me, Adam Thielen, wide receiver 23, 24, no thanks. Wide receiver 29, 30. Sure, I could get on board with that. But you look at last year, I mean, he played almost every game, and he was gutting through some injuries at parts of the season, but he played 15 games last season and gave you just 925 yards. His value totally buoyed by those 14 touchdowns that he had last season. And we know wide receiver touchdowns are as volatile as they get. Receiving touchdowns, very hard to repeat year over year. So you take that, you factor in that this is a team that wants to run the football and can do so effectively and can win games with Dalvin Cook getting 25 carries a game. And then the big thing for me also that really puts this over the top, he's got a superstar. He's got an alpha on the other side in Justin Jefferson. And we already saw Justin Jefferson get ahead of him in targets per game last year. And I will be shocked if that gap does not widen this season. And we see Justin like last year, from a pure target perspective, they were co-ones in Minnesota's offense. This year, right, Justin Jefferson is unquestionably going to be the one, and Adam Thielen is going to be the two. And even if you go back to the Stephon Diggs years, he's never not been at least a co-one in the years since he has had his breakout season. And this will be the first time we see Adam Thielen as the clear and obvious number two guy in terms of usage in this offense. And for me, with that, with his age starting to creep up on him, with the injuries he dealt with over the last couple of seasons, that pushes him from wide receiver 2 range to wide receiver 3 range. You still got to take him as a wide receiver 2. So at cost, I am pretty comfortably out on Adam Thielen. Do either of you guys want to argue against me or pat me on the back for that awesome argument?
Brandon's not his head. I'm still taking him as a top 25, top 20 wide receiver, because even if he is the number 2, this is the Vikings passing game.
That's the route tree right there.
It's two guys.
The usage tree. I mean, the usage tree.
Yeah, it's as funneled as it gets. So, what do you want to do?
That's a fair counter for sure.
Who do you have? Like, do you want to do like Juju versus Thielen? Would you take Juju over Thielen?
I would not take Juju over Thielen, but
names.
let me I would take T. Higgins over Thielen.
I have them almost back to back. Just give me somebody else.
Well, why do I have to give you somebody else? That's someone who I would take Deontay Johnson over Thielen.
Well, I have Deontay Johnson ranked higher. That's my boy.
How about Odell Beckham? I'll say Odell Beckham.
Okay, cool. I'll take Thielen over Odell Beckham.
Cue that up as a side bet. Odell Beckham versus Adam Thielen. I mean, let's just also say that you rejected my first two that I threw out there. So one of whom I think you also have. Whatever. I wanted T. Higgins to be the best, but I'll do that.
You're now going to spend 3 weeks in January figuring out all these bets, Beller.
I'm writing them all down. I write them down during the show, and then I put them into a document. So I've got them all, but yes, tracking them might be a bit of a pain later in the season. But I'll be on paternity leave in January and February again, so I'm gonna have some time on my hands. Let's get to the overvalued tight ends. Let's try to get through these ones relatively quickly so we can call it a show here. Jake, you got the first one. Mark Andrews is yours. I am 100% on board with you here, but make the case for Andrews being overvalued.
Well, this could easily change though, because no Bateman, as we talked about before.
Right. That does change things a little bit, but as it is right now,
it just really comes down to rounds. And if he's going in the 5th round, I'm just not going to invest. This is the range of tight ends where I don't want to take tight ends. If I miss out on the big 3, 4, honestly, and Kyle Pitts, then I'm just waiting and I'm taking the Troutmans of the world later. So, and Higbees of the world. So that's really what it comes down to. I hate taking these range of tight ends.
Brandon, I'm going to jump in because my argument for my guy is exactly the same. It's why I'm not taking TJ Hawkinson. I just can't do it. I can't do Andrews. I can't do Hawkinson. I can't do those guys.
Can't do Jared Goff.
Well, that is obviously true. Oh, no, this is not overall. Let me get back to the overall ADP charts. Like, I can't do Hawkinson when he is ADP-wise sandwiched in between Mike Davis and Tyler Lockett, ahead of Deontay Johnson, ahead of DJ Moore, ahead of Travis Etienne. Like, I just can't do that. I can't get on board with those 4th, 5th, 6th round tight ends. I'll take an elite tight end. I probably won't do that very often. Or I'll go and I'll get, like Jake said, Adam Troutman or I don't know, Cole Kmet or Tyler Higbee, right? Like, I'll go that route before I go this route. So that is why I'm out on Hawkinson. Like the player enough, hate the cost.
Yeah, I guess we're all kind of the same, because that's my Noah Fant. Because once you decide you're not in on those early guys, then Noah Fant ends up being the first of the next group, and I just would be like, I'm not taking the first of the next group. I'm going to take the last of the next group, and it's going to be Troutman or Cole Kmet or Tyler Higbee. And And you're even seeing fans sometimes go ahead of Dallas Goedert, who I think is closer to the first group than he is to the second group. So it's just I think Fant was 12th in fantasy points per game among tight ends with at least 12 games. I just don't know if there's a whole lot of movement there for him with Cortland Sutton back. He was a 60-catch, 600-yard guy. I think that's his ceiling now at the most. So he is what we've seen he is, which is a back-end tight end one. I'm not going to pay a mid-tight end one price to that.
Did you just subtweet the whole he is who we thought he was? Is that what you're kind of
let him off the hook?
I might have, yeah.
Noah Fant for me is someone who I have been in on to varying degrees during best ball season. But I look at him I'm taking Dallas Goedert over him for sure. And now with what we're seeing with Curtis Samuel, I'm probably taking Logan Thomas over him as well. With Curtis Samuel is going to be missing some significant time at the start of the season. But yeah, it's a very similar argument for why to fade all three of Andrews, Fant, and Hockenson that we make here. Let's wrap things up, guys. We've got one more clue for Guess That Player, and then we can guess that player. Clue number 3. This might be I hope this is the one that gives it away, or at least gets you into a range of guys. One of 5 receivers with multiple rushing touchdowns in 2020, which maybe helped that point per game number. So he had multiple rushing touchdowns. He was one of 5 receivers with multiple rushing touchdowns. He also was the wide receiver 17 in points per game, and does have a bit of unevenness in that game because he had 3 games with 3 or fewer targets last season. Who is that player?
This is my guess. I don't know if you can see it, but
Chase Claypool is Funston's guess. It might be right. It might be wrong. We'll wait and see what Brandon's or Jake's guess is. Your lighting sucks, dude.
No, the lighting is great. It's the whiteboard. Oh, there we go. I can move it back away, and there you go. Can you see it?
Cool.
Ayuk.
Ooh. That player is Brandon Ayuk is the correct answer. I was hoping someone was going to guess Chase Claypool because it's very similar with what those guys did. But Ayuk is the answer.
The rushing touchdowns is what helped.
Well, Claypool had multiple rushing touchdowns as well.
Yeah, I know.
It was,
I'm saying, but I knew Claypool on the first. I wasn't even thinking Claypool for the first 2. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it was the 2. If you're interested, it was the 2 of them: Tyreek, Curtis Samuel, and Robert Woods, who had multiple.
That's what I was gonna say. The 2 rushing touchdowns made me think about Robert Woods, but I was like, there's no way he.
Well, he was in the clue. He was in the first. He was in the
first
clue.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
I told you the first clue. I was too busy looking up Method Man.
Brandon, for your reference, Chase Claypool was wide receiver 26 in points per game last season. So yeah, but Brandon Ayuk, we've got a side bet on Ayuk for Deebo Samuel, Jake. I don't know if you remember that one. I think it's I've got Ayuk having 1.5 more targets per game than Samuel.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. I'm also looking up a black dry erase board to get the reverse so we can actually see the things I write.
Oh, man. I like that quite a bit. Brandon Ayuk is a guy who I think we should dive into a little bit more, and maybe we'll find a reason to do that. But we've already found plenty of reasons to talk about a whole lot of guys on this episode of the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. So we are going to call it a show. And hey, we're also going to call it a week on the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. The 3 of us, me, Brandon, Jake, we are back with you next Monday. We've got 3 episodes coming your way next week and 3 episodes coming your way all of the rest of draft season. And hey, we're adding a 4th episode the last week of August as well. So get ready for that. So everyone who is on YouTube with us here, thank you for joining us. Everyone listening to the podcast, thank you to you as well. We'll be back with you next week. Have a great weekend. Talk to you soon.